Good afternoon, my name is Martin, and in this video I will be showing you how to install the Bosh director on VMware vSphere. This video is the second in a series of videos explaining how to install Bosh directors on different IaaS platforms, first of which is VirtualBox, and I will probably put up a link here, or maybe here. Alright, let's get started. First thing we need is a working vSphere environment. I have one set up on my home lab. It is using vSphere 6.5, and I'll just show it to you, shall I? There we go. I've already got it set up. It's at 192.168.1.202. Just going to log in there. Martin at vSphere. Oh, let's type that correctly, shall we? vSphere.local. Password. I am not going to tell you what my password is. All right, there we go. I like using the HTML5 client. So let's just go home. There's a bunch of information about the resources we have. And while we're here, let's start by creating a user for our Bosh deployment, shall we? All right, let's go to administration, users and groups, add a user. I'm going to call it Bosh. Password will be password 01 exclamation mark, which is very insecure, but for this demo it'll be all right. Bosh at bosh.com. Sure, why not? All right, now we need to make an administrator. There we go. Add a user, user Bosh, add it. All right, and there it is. Let's just log out and see if that works. Bosh at vSphere.local, password 01 exclamation mark. There we go. Wonderful. All right. Now I am going to log on to my jump box, which I like to use to deploy Bosh. It is simply a CentOS 7 VM that I have set up there. I can do this from my MacBook, but for this demo I like using a jump box. It makes it a little faster and it gives me the opportunity to show you how it works on Linux. So I'm just going to log in Martin at 192.168.1.205, and there we go. I already set up my private key, so it just logs in automatically. Okay. Now we also need the Bosh command line interface. That makes sense, right? So I'm opening up a ph.bosh.io, going to go to installation, and in this case we're using Linux, so I'm going to copy that link and just, let's do this as root, right? So I'm in root, wget s3 amazon aws.com bosh CLI. All right, there we go. And there we have it. So I'm moving Bosh to user local bin Bosh. I did a typo. User local bin Bosh. User local bin Bosh. Right, that never happened. Let's give it the right to execute. Here's a local bin Bosh. All right, Bosh version. Yes. All right, now I'm back to user Martin. Bosh version. Yes, wonderful. Another thing we need is Git. I already installed it, but if you don't, on CentOS, it's a matter of doing yum install git. There we go. Oops. Obviously, need to be root. And it says nothing to do because it's already installed. All right. Next, let's set up a workspace. A workspace being a directory from which we work and do our things. Create a workspace under development called Bosh vSphere, and I CD'd into it. We're in there right now. All right, now we clone the Cloud Foundry Bosh deployment repository. git clone https github cloud foundry Bosh deployment. That was fast. There it is. All right, this gives us the bosh.yaml file, which we will use for our deployment. I'll give you a quick look inside of there to show you what's going on. So we go into Bosh deployment, bosh.yaml. This is a very complicated file explaining the Bosh CLI, how to install the Bosh director on your IaaS platform, in our case, vSphere. Now there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, but I want you to take note of these values right here. They are in between double parentheses, which in Bosh language means that they are variables, and you need to change them into something that makes sense for your particular situation. Like here it says internal CIDR, internal gateway, internal IP. I'll show you how to do that. There's this very complicated command that we need to run, which is Bosh create environment, and then have it point to the bosh.yaml file. And then we need to set a couple of these variables. And I'll show you what that looks like. Here's one I made earlier. All right, here's the entire command that we're going to use. But as you may have noticed, it's not complete yet. There's a couple of values that we still need to fill in, and I'll show you where to get that information. All right, so here's the actual command, create environment, Bosh deployment, bosh.yaml. Then there's this -- state equals, and then we're going to save that into a state.json file. The state.json file is, it describes the state of the deployed Bosh environment, and it's handy if you want to do multiple deployments. Then there's the varstore, -- varstore, which saves to crets.yaml. The varstore, the crets.yaml file is where Bosh will store the generated CA certificate, the generated password to log into the director. It's going to generate all of these things. You don't get to tell it what the admin password is going to be. You don't get to give it a certificate. It's going to generate all those for you. Then there's, oh, by the way, that's very interesting. This one says -o and this says -v. The difference being -o means ops file, which is an entire file filled with parameters that you can set beforehand. So in this case, we're filling some of the variables in bosh.yaml with a -ops file, which is also located in Bosh deployment, which is the cpi.yaml. CPI stands for Cloud Provider Interface, which describes the different ways of communicating with your IaaS platform. Like vSphere has a certain set of commands that you need to use if you want to, create VMs, clone VMs, delete VMs using the command line interface or REST API. VirtualBox, like the video I did before, has different commands, as you can imagine, to create VMs, destroy VMs, clone VMs, and AWS has yet another set of commands. So how does Bosh know how to speak to all these different IaaS platforms? Well, we described that in the Cloud Provider Interface. Luckily, Cloud Foundry has already provided that for us, so we don't need to tell it how to do that. This is like a Rosetta Stone, a translation tablet, if you will. It explains to our Bosh director how to communicate with our IaaS platform. All right, then there's a -v. -v means single variable, and in this case we're going to change the value of the director name to bosh-director because I think that's a pretty good name. Then there's internal CIDR. That's our network and subnet. I am just using my home subnet. My home network of 192.168.1.0/24 because I don't want to make it too difficult for this demonstration, so I'm just going to put it in my home network. Then there's the internal gateway. The internal gateway is, what you need to escape from your local network and get to the internet. And we do need to get to the internet because we're going to be downloading a whole bunch of stuff like stem cells and releases. The internal gateway for my network is 192.168.1.1. Then there's the internal IP. This is the IP address the Bosh director is going to get. I've chosen 192.168.1.100 because it's easy to remember. All right, then there is network name. This I haven't filled out yet. This has to be the exact same as the network name that you have in your vCenter environment. So we're just going to browse the vCenter I am logged in as Bosh. I'm going to go to networking, and there we have it, VM space network. This is another network that I use for experiments, but right now I just want to use the default VM network, which is called VM space network. Make sure that you get the casing right, because this is important. All right, so uppercase VM space uppercase N network. All right. Next up is vCenter DC. vCenter DC stands for vCenter Data Center. That makes sense, right? We can already see it up here. The name of my data center is data center with a capital D. So that's what I'm going to fill in there. Data center. Then there is vCenter DS, which stands for data store. I have two different data stores in my network, in my vSphere environment. One is fast storage, one is called slow storage. The difference being is that one is on SSDs and the other is on a simple normal hard disk, which is slow but bigger. I want to use fast storage for this, so that's what I'm going to pick. Fast storage, small f, capital S, fast. Storage is the name of my data store. vCenter IP, this is the IP address of the vCenter installation. You can see it up here. It's 192.168.1.202. 192.168.1.202. vCenter user. Now we just made this, remember? It is Bosh, but you got to remember, you also need to put add vSphere.local behind there. If you're using an Active Directory, make sure that you put the entire context in there. vCenter password. Remember, it was password 01 exclamation mark. Then there is vCenter templates. This is the vCenter folder that Bosh is going to create where it's going to put its template. It knows how to work with subfolders. So what I like to do is I suggest you put everything on a folder that has the same name as your Bosh director. See, I'm already kind of contradicting myself because I named my Bosh director Bosh-director, and I'm going to name this Bosh, and then just, go templates. So the templates will be put under a folder called Bosh and then under templates. vCenter VMs is kind of the same as the templates. It's where it's going to put the actual VMs in vCenter, and I'm going to put this in Bosh and then name it VMs. vCenter disks, same story. This is where it's going to put the disks on the data store. So I'm going to do Bosh and then I'm going to call it disks. And then vCenter cluster. This is the name of the cluster you have on vSphere. If you do not have a cluster configured, you really need to do so. Otherwise, Bosh is not going to deploy. Even if you only have one ESXi host, you still need to have a cluster. So if we go in here, you can see that I have a cluster and it only has one host, and the name of the cluster is cluster. I'm not very imaginative. So that's what we fill in. Cluster. All right. Now we have a complete command that we can execute on our jump host. I'm just going to clear the screen for a little bit and execute it. All right. Started validating, downloading release Bosh. See, that's why it also needed. It's downloading the release. It's going to do some compilation, and this is probably the part where I skip forward a little bit. All right, that took quite some time, but it needed to compile a whole bunch of stuff, so that makes sense. Now we have a deployed Bosh director on vSphere. I'll show you what that looks like. Like we said, there's the Bosh folder. There are the templates, better known as stem cells, but I'll get into that. And here are VMs. And this one VM, that is our Bosh director right there. Okay, cool. So now we need to do stuff with our director. So we need to log into it. We do that by creating an alias for our environment. That's done with the following command. Bosh-e, as in environment, 192.168.1.100. Remember, that's the IP address we chose for our Bosh director. Alias env, create an alias for our environment. I want to name it vSphere. It needs a CA certificate, and I'm going to get that by doing Bosh interpolate on crats.yaml. Remember, that's the file that Bosh uses to store its passwords and its certificates. And it needs to go to the path director underscore SSL/CA for certificate authority. There we go. Name is Bosh director. CPI is vSphere CPI, and the user is not logged in, but that's no good because we do want to be logged in, right? So, okay. To be able to log in, we need the administrator password. Let's do that same Bosh interpolation trick on the creds.yaml file and say, okay, we want what's under the path admin password. And this is what it gives us. That's the administrator password. Now, if you don't want to do Bosh interpolate, you can just do head creds.yaml, and you see it's just a YAML file with a whole bunch of information. One of them is admin password, and here's that value we got earlier. Okay, I put that in my clipboard. I'm gonna go Bosh login. Let's see, -e vSphere. I can't seem to type that properly. Username admin, password we got earlier. All right, there we go. We are logged in. So if we do Bosh envs for environments, there we go. There it is, alias vSphere URL, and we are logged in. So Bosh environment -e vSphere, it will show us that, hey, look, user admin. We are logged in as the user admin. Now, I don't want to keep typing that -e vSphere for environment because I'm a very lazy person. So I'm going to export a environment variable called Bosh underscore environment, all uppercase, and name it vSphere. So now I no longer have to type this -e vSphere bit. I just have to type Bosh. So if I do Bosh VMs, there we go. If I do Bosh instances, there we go. It all works. That's good. All right, now we have a working director, but that doesn't really actually give us anything. If we want to be able to do cool stuff like deploy Bosh deployments, we need a couple of more things. First up is a cloud config. But what is a cloud config, I hear you ask? We already had this CPI thing that describes how to communicate with our IaaS platform, right? Why do we need a cloud config? Because a cloud config describes the different types of virtual infrastructure that you have on your IaaS platform, like the different types of VMs, how many CPUs they have, the size of the storage, all that stuff. So in the Bosh vSphere folder under the Bosh repository, there is a cloud config for vSphere. This YAML file has variables just like before. Here, let me show you. Bosh deployment, vSphere, and then cloud config.yaml. Stuff like vCenter cluster. Remember, we had that before. Internal CIDR, internal gateway, all that stuff. Network name. So we need to do that whole Bosh interpolate thing again. So I'm going to take the command for uploading a cloud config, which is not actually upload, it's update. And I'm going to tell it to Bosh interpolate the cloud config file and fill in some variables for me. All right, let's see. There should not be a parentheses after that. There should be a parentheses after that. All right, what's wrong? Manifest should be a hash. Is that because I'm in the wrong directory? That is because I am in the wrong directory. All right, let's try that again. Manifest should be a hash. Cloud config.yaml. Ah, right. So cd Bosh vSphere Bosh and cloud config. Cd Bosh vSphere. It says here Bosh update cloud config, Bosh interpolate cloud config.yaml. So we need to be in the folder where it's in. See, that works. Need to be in the proper folder. All right, here's all the values that we saw earlier, but those variables are now actually filled in with values. Well, these are just the same values that we had before. I will provide a link to a gist that shows you what I've been using. All right, so that gives us a cloud config, Bosh cloud config. There it is. Now there's just one more thing I actually want you to change. And this is actually, I didn't put this in the original cloud config because I want to show you the way of changing your cloud config. Anyway, I mean, you probably want to do this in the future, so it's good practice. Here's what we do. We get the Bosh cloud config by typing Bosh cloud config, and we want to save that to a temporary file. I call it cc.yaml for cloudconfig.yaml. Then I open that up, and here's what I want to do. I want to go to networks and then go to reserved. What I want to do is I want to reserve a couple of IP addresses. What this does is it basically tells Bosh to not touch these IP addresses. So I'm just going to copy paste that in there because I made it beforehand, but I will explain what it is that I'm doing. So here we go. All right, I told it to reserve the range 192.168.1.1-192.168.1.99, comma, and 192.168.1.151-192.168.1.255. What this effectively does is it tells it to not use the first bit of our IP range, 1 to 99, 100 being our director, and not use the last bit from 151 to 255. So it effectively only gets IP address 101 until 150, which is 49 IP addresses, which should be more than enough. All right, I'm going to save that. I'm going to go Bosh update cloud config, point to the file we just made, and it's going to tell us like, hey, there's a difference here. You added 2 ranges to your reserved array. I'm like, yep, that is exactly what I wanted. Upload. Good, now it's in there. All right, that's good. So now we have a CPI and a cloud config. We know how to communicate with vSphere, and we tell vSphere what the different types of VMs are that we want to use. Like it says up here, like, okay, disk types and different availability zones and all that stuff. Different VM types. Like we have a default VM which has 2 CPUs and 3 gigs of disk space and 1 gig of RAM. And it has a large VM which has 2 CPUs and 30 gigs of RAM disk space and 4 gigs of RAM. And you can change this. You can create whatever you want in here. These are just your different t-shirt sizes, but I'm going to go with the default ones. All right, now we need a stem cell. What's a stem cell, you might ask? And that's a pretty good question. A stem cell is Bosh's unique ways of providing you with a containerized operating system. There are different stem cells for different IaaS platforms. So we are going to go back to bosh.io, and I'm going to go to stem cells, and we need to pick the stem cell for vSphere. Let's see, there it is, VMware vSphere version 3586. I need to get this, the full stem cell, go back to my jump host. Let's see, where am I? I am in Bosh vSphere. I want to be in Bosh vSphere, actually. Yeah, okay. I'm going to download this stem cell. There we go. All right, this is going to take a little while. All right, there it is. It's a tar.gzip file. So we are now going to upload this to our Bosh directory. Let's see, we just do Bosh upload stem cell Bosh stem cell. All right, there it goes. It's pretty fast, right? 40 megabytes a second. That's pretty cool. And it's uploaded. It's in there. This is Ubuntu. Basically what we did was we got a pre-packaged VM which has Ubuntu on it, Ubuntu Trusty, and this has been packaged for us by the people of Cloud Foundry. This is actually really cool because it frees us from the hassle of having to update our operating system. It frees us from patch management, lifecycle management, all that stuff. We no longer have to do any of that because it's in our stem cell. It's pre-made for us. And if there is a vulnerability, an exploit that got discovered, like that Heartbleed thing we had a while ago. The Cloud Foundry people, they update their stem cell. We simply download it and upload the stem cell, redeploy our deployments, and then it will be provided with the new, the fresher, the newer, the patched operating system, which no longer has the vulnerabilities in there. This is really cool because you don't have to do this. They do it for you, and your deployments will still be there. They will still work. It's like changing chairs underneath people while they're still sitting. It's really cool. All right. Bosh stem cells. There it is. Bosh vSphere, ESXi, Ubuntu, Trustego. It's up there. Okay, that's the first thing we need. It's the stem cell, it's the operating system. Now what we need is a release. I'm going to download an Nginx release because Nginx is easy. It's a web server. You can immediately see what it's doing. Now we need a release. The release is a pre-packaged format that you install on top of a stem cell, and it will compile binaries and libraries that you need to do things. In this case, Nginx. You need a compiled version of Nginx to be able to host the website. So we go back to bosh.io. We go to releases. And we look for the Nginx release. There it is. And it says you can reference this release in your deployment manifest, but I want to do this first. It says Bosh upload release ## to check if it hasn't been tampered with. You don't need to do this, but it's a good idea to do this. And then there's the URL bosh.io github.com Nginx release version 1.13.12. Just going to copy this to my clipboard. Go back to my jump host and say, hey, I want to upload a release. It's located there. This tells the director to download the release. We're not downloading it to the jump host and then uploading it to the director. The director downloaded this directly by giving it this command. So Bosh releases. There it is. Nginx version 1.13. So now we have a stem cell and a release. Now we can deploy a deployment. That's funny to say, right? Deploy deployment. Here's a very simple Nginx deployment that I've created earlier. I've also used this exact same deployment in my earlier video, so if you've seen that, this will probably look very familiar. I'm going to create a YAML file, which I'm going to call nginx.yaml. I am going to paste my deployment in there. You can see that it uses the stem cell Ubuntu. It uses the release Nginx, and it wants one instance of Nginx using the Ubuntu stem cell, and it does a bunch of things here. All right, I'm going to save that file, and I am going to say Bosh-D for deployment. Give the deployment a name, which is Nginx, and do the command deploy. I tend to forget that, you shouldn't. And say, hey, I want the Nginx YAML file I just created. It's like, okay, this is all the information that's in there. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm pretty sure I want to do this. Click yes. Task 3, preparing deployment, preparing packages, compiling packages, Nginx. All right, and this might take a little. All right, and we're done. So it just deployed Nginx. So we had 3 parts, right? Remember, 3 different distinct parts. We had the stem cell, which is the operating system, which is built for us by the Cloud Foundry people. Then we have our release, which tells Bosh how to actually install Nginx on top of that stem cell. And then third up was our deployment, which says, okay, I want a deployment of this release, and I want this number of instances. As you can imagine, the deployment usually has more than just one release in there. It's like a load balancer, a couple of Nginx's, maybe a database. So that's your deployment. All right, so let's have a look. If we go Bosh VMs, then we can see like, hey, there is a running VM in there, which is, it has its own IP address, 101. That makes sense, right? I'll show you in vCenter where it is. If we go back to vCenter, here's our Bosh folder. Here's VMs. If we just make this a little wider, you see this is like a randomly generated GUID. So you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that you do not get to name your VMs anymore. Your Bosh director names your VMs. If we do Bosh-D for deployment, Nginx, and I say I want to see the instances, then there we go, Nginx E48. I want to see the VMs, which is the same one as we saw earlier. Here's the VM CID, VM-44269. Let's see, VM44269CBC. That's the one. This is our Nginx instance. Okay, let's see if that works. 192.168.1.101. Welcome to Nginx. Isn't it great? There it is. It's our very own deployed Nginx deployment, and it's running on Bosh. Okay, so what makes Bosh so cool, right? I mean, I'm sure that you're thinking, well, I got Terraform or other tools. Bosh not only deploys your VMs, it also makes sure that they stay healthy by checking up on them, and if they no longer respond, it will restart them or throw them away and make new ones. It very much believes in the cattle versus pets philosophy, but I'll get into that more using a different video probably. All right, so if we have a look at our deployment, right, and say we want to change it, say, okay, I'm going to take the Nginx deployment and say, okay, I don't want one instance, I want 2 instances of Nginx, because you know you can never have too much of a good thing. If I say Bosh-D Nginx, that's our existing deployment, deploy yet again, and choose Nginx.yaml, it's going to go like, hey, there's a difference here. It used to be 1 and now it's 2. Are you sure we want to do this? I'm like, yep, let's do it. This is probably going to take a lot less time than before because it doesn't need to compile anything. It already compiled it. It just needs to create a missing VM. And if we look in our vSphere environment, you can see that it says, hey man, I'm going to power on a virtual machine. And look, it's already up there. There's our 3rd virtual machine right there. It's not done yet, but it's deploying it. It's creating the missing VM. Okay, let's give that a minute. All right, and it's done. So, Bosh VMs. There it is. There's the second one. As you probably already guessed, the IP address is 102. All right. Let's see if that one works as well. 102. Welcome to Nginx. There, yet another one. See, we can do millions of these this way. It's so easy. All right. So that was creating a deployment, installing a Bosh director on vSphere, and then providing it with a stem cell, providing it with releases, and then deploying a deployment using those releases and those stem cells. Now there's only a couple of things left to do. Let's say we no longer want this deployment, right? We simply go Bosh-D Nginx and then delete deployment. That command makes a lot of sense, right? It's like, are you sure? Yep, sure. Throw that stuff away, deleting the instance. If we go back to vSphere, you can see power off virtual machine, delete file. It's fast, right? Delete virtual machine, gone, all gone. That was easy. No more Nginx. All right. Now say we want to delete our Bosh director, our entire Bosh environment. You don't do that very often, and if you want to be like really hardcore about it, you could just go in here and delete all of this stuff in vSphere, but that's very dirty. You want to do it the proper way. So we're going to take that command that we did earlier, and instead of create environment, we're going to go delete environment. Paste that same command in there, and it's going to do everything it did, but in reverse, and remove your Bosh director and leave you with a clean environment. You want to do it this way because maybe, well, probably if you're working in an enterprise environment, you've got several Bosh directors deployed and you don't want to delete the wrong VMs. So as you can see, it's stopping the jobs, it's unmounting disks, it's deleting VMs, it's deleting the stem cell, all that stuff. Stem cells were put in the templates folder, by the way. You can tell because it starts with SC and then a dash. That stands for stem cell. All right, succeeded. So it's no longer there. Got to be completely honest with you. It will leave some stuff on your vSphere environment. So now you're free to just delete this. but it leaves it here because if you really want to, you could still recover your deleted Bosh directed deployment. All right, that's all there is to it. I want to sign off by thanking you for watching and stay tuned for the next video. Bye.